December 18th, 2025. Statesville, North Carolina. The world sees a private jet, a white Cessna Citation II, gleaming in the misty morning light. It looks like the pinnacle of success. Inside, you have a NASCAR legend, Greg Biffle. You have a retired airline captain. You have a family heading home for the holidays. From the outside, everything looks perfect. The machine is fueled, the engines are running, the door is locked. But if you could strip away the aluminum skin, if you could look into the wiring, into the logbooks, and into the minds of the men in the cockpit, you would see that this airplane was already crashing. It didn't crash because of an engine explosion. It didn't crash because the wings fell off. It crashed because of the things no one is talking about. Why was a 20,000-hour airline veteran flying a jet he wasn't legally allowed to command alone? Why did the cockpit go pitch black for 4 minutes in the middle of a cloud? And what is the celebrity passenger syndrome, a psychological virus that kills the most experienced pilots? The NTSB preliminary report is out. And while the news is talking about fog and stalls, we are going to talk about the switches, the secrets, and the silent mistakes that doomed Flight 257 before it even moved an inch. I'm Kevin, and this is the story no one else is telling you. To understand this tragedy, we have to stop looking at the wreckage and start looking at the licenses. The man in the left seat, the captain, was Dennis Dutton, 67 years old, a former Air Force pilot, a former Delta Airlines captain. When you hear that resume, you think safety, you think invincible. You assume that a man who has flown Boeing 767 seconds across oceans can handle a little Cessna Citation with his eyes closed. But aviation doesn't care about your past. It only cares about your currency. Here is the detail buried deep in the NTSB files that the mainstream media missed. Dennis Dutton's type rating for the CE 500, the specific license to fly this Citation jet, was new. He only earned it in May of 2025, just 7 months before the crash. Why does this matter? Because the Cessna Citation 550 is not a Boeing. It doesn't have the automated safety nets of a modern airliner. It is a raw, mechanical beast from 1981. And because Dennis was new to this specific airframe, the FAA placed a restriction on his license, a stamp that read, CE 500 second in command required. This is a critical regulatory safety net. It means, Dennis, you are a great pilot, but you are new to this plane. You are not allowed to fly it alone. You need a qualified partner to watch the systems while you fly. This isn't a suggestion, it is a hard legal wall. Now, look at the right seat. Jack Dutton, the captain's son. The NTSB report labels him a pilot-rated passenger. That is a polite way of saying he was not a co-pilot. Jack held a private pilot license. He had 175 hours of total flight time, but crucially, his rating was for single-engine land. He was trained to fly a Cessna 172 Skyhawk, a propeller plane that flies at 100 knots. He had 0 ratings for multi-engine aircraft. He had 0 type ratings for a turbojet. So, let's be brutally honest about what happened the moment the door closed. Legally, this was a single pilot operation. Dennis Dutton was the only person on board qualified to touch the controls. But he was flying an airplane that required 2 pilots. He was flying without the legal exemption to operate single pilot. From the very first second, the safety margin was gone. If Dennis became overloaded, if he dropped a pen, if his instruments failed, there was no one to catch him. Jack Dutton was there as a son, learning from his father. He could talk on the radio, he could read a checklist, but he could not, legally or technically, fly the jet in an emergency. And as we will see, an emergency was exactly what was waiting for them. Now, let's go deeper. Let's look at the machine itself. N257BW, A1981, Citation II. Before they even left the ramp, the airplane tried to warn them. The NTSB report mentions a detail that most people skimmed over. Engine start was initiated using onboard battery power. Initial unsuccessful start of the left engine. Let's unpack this. Most jets start using a ground power unit GPU, a cart that plugs in and provides clean, strong electricity. But on this morning, they use the ship's battery. Starting a jet engine takes a massive amount of amperage. It drains the battery violently. When the first attempt on the left engine failed, that battery took a huge hit. The voltage dropped. So, how did they get the engines running? Citation experts believe they likely performed a cross-generator start. This is a standard procedure, but it adds complexity. You start the right engine, engine 2, first, you bring it up to speed, you turn on the right generator. Then you use the electricity from the right engine to jump-start the left engine. Why is this relevant to a crash 15 minutes later? Because it sets up a trap in the cockpit switches. When you are doing a cross-gen start, you are flipping switches, managing loads, and watching temperatures. If you are distracted, if you are rushing, it is very easy to leave a switch in the wrong position. Did they leave a starter switch engaged? Did they forget to bring the left generator online fully? Or did the massive voltage drop during the failed start weaken a circuit breaker? We don't know for sure yet, but we do know this. Minutes later, when they were in the clouds, the cockpit went dark. For 3 minutes and 55 seconds, the CVR recorded nothing but silence from the captain's audio panel. The electrical system died. And here is where the expert witness analysis becomes terrifyingly plausible. On the Citation II, the inverter switch, the switch that converts DC battery power to AC power for your instruments, is located on the pilot's left sub-panel. It is dangerously close to other controls. Some pilots, during the stress of departure, have been known to accidentally bump or switch off the inverter when they mean to hit the igniters or retract the gear. If you lose the inverter, you lose your AC bus. If you lose your AC bus, you lose your attitude indicator. The artificial horizon freezes. The gyro tumbles. And suddenly, you are flying inside a cloud at 200 miles per hour, and your main instrument is lying to you. We know this happened, because on the CVR, Dennis Dutton says, "My gyro is tumbling." He confirms the failure. The failed start on the ground wasn't just a nuisance. It was the first domino in a chain reaction that would kill 7 people. The engines are running, the electrics are questionable. Now, they prepare to taxi. And here we encounter the difference between airline flying and private flying. Dennis Dutton spent his career at Delta. In that world, before every flight, a dispatcher hands you a release. Inside that release is a told card, takeoff and landing data. It tells you exactly your rotation speed is 108 knots, your V2 safety speed is 115 knots, your VREF landing speed is 106 knots. You don't guess. You memorize. You set the bugs on your speedometer. It is religion. But in general aviation, there is no dispatcher. You are the dispatcher. You have to open the thick flight manual. You have to look at the graph. You have to calculate the weight of the fuel, the 7 passengers, the baggage. You have to calculate the speeds yourself. Did Dennis Dutton do this? The investigation is still ongoing, but there is a suspicion that he did not. Why? Because veteran pilots sometimes rely on muscle memory. They think, I've flown this plane 100 times, I know what it feels like. But a Citation 550 is extremely sensitive to weight. An empty jet flies very differently from a jet loaded with 7 people and full fuel. The stall speed increases dramatically when you are heavy. If Dennis didn't have that VREF number written down, if he didn't have a told card clipped to the yoke, he was flying by feel. And in a high-stress emergency, feel is the first thing to disappear. Without that reference number, he didn't know exactly where the cliff edge was. He was walking in the dark. At 9:45 a.m., the automated weather AWOS said the ceiling was 3,900 feet, manageable. But by 10 a.m., a front was moving in. The ceiling was collapsing to 1,200 feet. Dennis makes a decision. He decides to take off VFR, Visual Flight Rules. This means he plans to fly visually, stay out of the clouds, and then call air traffic control to pick up his IFR clearance in the air. Why do this? Impatience. Efficiency. Getting a clearance on the ground at a non-towered airport can take 20 minutes. You have to call via phone or radio, wait for a slot, and hold. Taking off VFR gets you moving now. This is a classic case of normalization of deviance. Pilots do this all the time. I'll just pop up, call center, and get my code. But this assumes 2 things. 1, you can stay out of the clouds. 2, the controller isn't busy. Dennis lost both bets. As soon as they lifted off, the ceiling wasn't 3,900 feet. It was broken at 1,200. They climbed straight into the soup. Now, they are in the clouds. IMC. Technically, they are now flying illegally. You cannot be in clouds on a VFR flight plan. Jack Dutton on the radio tries to call Atlanta Center. Departure 257 Bravo Whiskey. Silence. He tries again. Center 257 Bravo Whiskey. Request IFR. Nothing. The frequency is congested. So now look at the situation. They are in the clouds. They have no clearance. The captain is hand flying a heavy jet. The captain's instruments begin to fail. And there is no qualified co-pilot to take over. The trap has snapped shut. 10:10 a.m. The situation goes from difficult to catastrophic. The CVR records the captain saying his instruments are failing. Then the captain makes a desperate move. He transfers control to his son. Your controls. Why? Why would an airline captain hand a jet over to an unqualified passenger in the middle of a cloud? Because he had to troubleshoot. Dennis likely needed to put his head down. He needed to find the circuit breakers. He needed to reset the generators. He was trying to save the electrical system. But then, silence. The captain's microphone dies. The audio panel dies. For nearly 4 minutes, we don't know what happened in the left seat. But we hear Greg Biffle, the NASCAR legend, sitting right behind the cockpit. Greg was a pilot. He had a multi-engine rating, though not for jets. He knew machines. He shouts, "How about the alternator?" He knew they were losing power. He was trying to help. Imagine the chaos. Jack is trying to keep the wings level, staring at unfamiliar instruments. Dennis is fumbling in the dark, resetting breakers. Greg is shouting suggestions. The plane is drifting. They are lost in the gray void. 10:14 a.m. Whatever Dennis did, it worked partially. The power comes back. The audio returns. And suddenly, they see the ground. They break out of the clouds at 1,800 feet. They are close to the airport. Dennis takes the controls back. I have the runway. He sees a chance to survive. He initiates a left turn to circle back for runway 28. But he is high. He is fast. He cuts the power to idle. Gear down. But the green lights don't come on. Jack says, "We're having some issues here." Now Dennis is fixated. He is staring at the gear lights. He is staring at the runway. He is not staring at his airspeed. He banks the aircraft steeply. He is at 500 feet above the ground. He is trying to squeeze a fast jet into a tight pattern designed for small planes. This is what aerodynamicists call the accelerated stall. When you bank a plane at 45 degrees, the wing needs more lift. The stall speed increases. A plane that stalls at 90 knots straight and level might stall at 105 knots in a turn. The data shows the speed bleeding away. 114 knots. 107 knots. They cross the threshold of death. 93 knots. The wing gives up. The lift evaporates. The stick shaker activates a violent vibration in the yoke. And here is the tragedy of the jet engine. The NTSB found the throttles in the wreckage. They were at full power. Dennis realized his mistake. In the final second, he slammed the throttles forward. He demanded power. But a Pratt & Whitney JT-15D is not a V8 engine. It doesn't respond instantly. It takes 6 to 8 seconds to spool up from idle to full thrust. He needed 6 seconds. He only had 2. The engines were screaming, trying to save them as they hit the trees. We have to talk about the why. Why did a veteran captain break so many rules? Why take off with a bad battery? Why take off VFR into bad weather? Why fly without a co-pilot? This brings us to the concept of Celebrity Passenger Syndrome, CPS. It is a term whispered in pilot lounges. When you are flying a VIP, a NASCAR legend, a CEO, a movie star, the dynamics in the cockpit change. Even if the passenger is nice, even if they don't say a word, the pilot feels an internal pressure to perform, to make it happen. I can't tell Greg Biffle we're stuck here because of a battery. I can't tell the Biffle family we have to wait 30 minutes for a clearance. So you cut corners. You take risks you wouldn't take if you were flying cargo. This insidious pressure is what leads to the normalization of deviance. You accept a small failure, then a bigger one, until you run out of luck. Dennis Dutton wanted to get his passengers home. He wanted to be the can-do captain, and that desire, combined with the mechanical traps, sealed their fate. Aviation accidents are never one thing. They are a stack of Swiss cheese slices. Usually, the holes don't align. The accident is stopped. But on Flight 257, the holes aligned perfectly. Hole 1, the regulation, flying without a qualified co-pilot. Hole 2, the machine, the battery failure and electrical instability. Hole 3, the environment, the deteriorating weather. Hole 4, the human, the failure to calculate told data and the fixation on the gear light. Hole 5, the physics, the slow spool-up time of the jet engines. Remove any one of these slices, and they are alive today. If Jack was a qualified SIC, he would have monitored the airspeed. If they had waited for an IFR clearance, they wouldn't have been rushing. If they had used a ground power unit, the electrical system might have held. The crash of N257BW wasn't an accident. It was a math equation, a deadly sum of small deviations that equaled a catastrophe. Greg Biffle spent his life mastering the art of control. In a race car, you are strapped in. You have a roll cage. You have a team. But in the sky, you are only as safe as your next decision. For the aviation community, this report is a brutal wake-up call. It reminds us that experience does not equal immunity. It reminds us that legal does not always mean safe. And it reminds us that the most dangerous pressure in the cockpit is the pressure we put on ourselves. We honor the 7 souls lost by learning from them. By saying no when the weather is bad, by calculating the speeds even when we've flown the plane 1,000 times, and by respecting the machine enough to know when to stay on the ground. I'm Kevin. This has been the untold story of the Greg Biffle crash. If you learned something today, share this video. It might save a life. I'll see you on the next debrief.